The town of Ravenshade was a quiet place, nestled deep in a valley where the fog rolled in thick every night. The townspeople always warned newcomers never to walk alone after dark, especially when the mist was at its heaviest. But Daniel, a skeptic and a newcomer, laughed off the superstition. He had moved into a small cottage on the outskirts of town, away from the bustle of the main square. The house was old but sturdy, with ivy creeping up its stone walls and a fireplace that crackled warmly at night. The only downside was the fog. Every evening, without fail, it would creep in like ghostly fingers, swallowing the streets, the trees, even the stars. Daniel had lived in big cities his whole life. He wasn't afraid of the dark, and he certainly wasn't afraid of a little fog. So when Mrs. Halloway, the elderly woman who ran the local grocery store, grabbed his wrist and whispered, "Stay inside when the fog comes. Don't listen to them," he had simply smiled and nodded, chalking it up to small-town superstition. But by the end of the week he wasn't so sure anymore. It started with the voices. On the 5th night in his new home, Daniel woke up to the sound of whispering. At first he thought it was the wind slipping through the cracks in the window. But as he listened, the voices grew clearer, soft, urgent, and just outside his bedroom wall. "Come outside." Daniel sat up, his heart pounding. "We see you?" The whispers were right by the window. Slowly he turned his head, dreading what he might see. But there was nothing there, just thick, suffocating fog pressing against the glass. It was so dense it looked almost solid, as if something could be standing just beyond it, watching. He told himself it was a dream. He buried his head under the covers and forced himself to sleep. But the next night they came back. By the 7th night, Daniel was exhausted. He hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. The voices were getting louder, the whispers more insistent. "Let us in. You belong to the fog now." It was always the same. They never banged on the doors or tried to break in, just whispered. But something about it felt worse than if they had. That night he made a mistake. Desperate for proof that he wasn't losing his mind, Daniel grabbed his phone and turned on the camera. He pressed record and walked to the window. The fog was thick, swirling unnaturally like it was alive. He held his breath and raised the phone. For a moment nothing happened. Just white mist curling and shifting. And then, a face. Not human. Not alive. Sunken eyes, stretched skin, a mouth that opened too wide. And behind it, more figures emerging from the fog, their bodies half-formed as if they were part of it. Daniel dropped the phone and stumbled back. The whispers turned to hissing. The window pane rattled. And then silence. The fog began to retreat. When Daniel finally picked up his phone, the recording was gone. The next morning he packed his bags. He didn't care about losing his deposit, didn't care about what people would say. He just wanted out. But as he reached the front door, something stopped him. Footprints. Not his. Leading from his bedroom window to the front of the house. And in the fog just beyond the trees, something waited. Watching. Waiting. Smiling.